come out in the morning to the ruins of Sardis, and we just walked through this structure here, which is behind me, and nowadays they call this the Temple of Artemis. In the Church Age book, it has a little bit different name that I'll talk about in a minute. But first of all, for those who aren't here, when we walked around the corner and we first saw this, Michael gasped and I was speechless. And we slowed down and we walked slowly through the ruins of this temple. And it's hard, if you're not here, to get an understanding of the size and the scale and the impressiveness that this structure has, even in its ruins, what it must have been in its glory. And if the sun's on it now, you see that it's white. Those are actually solid blocks of marble, and they're solid marble. And they're faded, they're not polished. But imagine if that were polished. I was thinking about that as we slowly walked through the ruins, and how much respect these people must have had for their God to put that much effort and that much time to make something so beautiful at great expense. It just testifies they really believed in that God, and it took sacrifice to build something of this size. And as we walk through it, and you see people walking through it, then you'll get an idea. Each one of those stones, we were commenting, must weigh more than a dozen cars. And the lines between the blocks are so fine, I couldn't put my fingernail into the line. So if you were, like any man, designed to be a worshiper, and you're designed to worship the true God that's in your heart, you'd be impressed by this structure, and you're reaching out for something that's true and something that's real. But we know that to impress with beauty is actually satanic, and the Lord impresses with humility. Well, if you look in the Church Ages book, it mentions this structure. And it's on page 243. And I'll just read here the third paragraph down under Sardis. The religion of this city was the impure worship of the goddess Cybele, and the massive ruins of the temple may still be seen. And these are those massive ruins right here. They still can be seen. So, what does this structure and the presence of this structure in this city teach us concerning the church ages? Well, one of the things that it represents is the worship of Mary. And in the Church Ages book, Cybele was the goddess who can be traced back to Semiramis, also called Diana of the Ephesians. As Erden mentioned to me earlier, it's always the same gal. But they just come down in different names, but it's worshiping the same person. And that worship ended up in the Catholic Church and attributed to Mary. And in the Church Age book, it makes the point that when the Reformation was coming on strong and the Catholic Church was being challenged, their response was to elevate the worship of Mary. And that is one of the reasons why this city in Sardis was chosen as the city to represent that age, because Mary worship expanded in that age even as the Reformation was coming forward. In fact, it expanded and elevated to the point where Christ was even removed from the picture. All the worship went to Mary. Well, back here in this temple, there was no Apollo, there was no Zeus, there was no male counterpart. It had all landed on Artemis, or Cybele. So that is the exact expression of what would happen in a future age. One more thing we'd like to share with you about this site at the city of Sardis is, if you look behind me, between the two pillars, up on the mountain there, that is the ruins of what is called an acropolis. An acropolis is a fortress that would be on the top of an area where there's a town down below, a fortress up on top that had city walls around it. And the important people of the city, if the city were attacked, that's where they would go for safety. And at one time, this city of Sardis had a very famous acropolis. It's hard to imagine it now, that covered the top of that mountain. At this time, all that's left is just that little piece, and maybe a couple of more. Now, why is that? How could that happen? Well, the foundation is soft. These hills are made of a sedimentary material that's a little bit like sandstone, and it crumbles. That's where they built their acropolis. And through the centuries, it was attacked many times. And the village is still here, down in the lower lying areas. But what used to be the glory of this city, and it was a capital city for many ages, a capital city. What used to be the glory is now gone. If you look in the message to the church of Sardis, Revelation chapter 3, "These things saith he that hath the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars. I know thy works, that thou hast a name, that thou livest, and art dead." This church and the church age of Sardis was living on a former glory that had passed away. And they'd built on a foundation that wasn't solid. This was the age of the Reformation that had a great start, but did not fulfill its calling. If you look on to what it says in verse 2, "Be watchful, and strengthen the things which remain that are ready to die, for I have not found thy works perfect before God." And to me, when the Lord picks a city to represent a future age, so many of the features of that city jump out when you read what the Scripture says. Of course, we know that work has to go on. The Reformation has to go on unto the consummation. But that age could not accomplish it. That was left for our age. But I'm here at Sardis and see these things, and this temple, and these grounds, and ponder these things. It really makes the Scripture come alive. And things will occur to you that you hadn't thought of before as you see the object lesson, the living object lesson that the Lord chose to communicate His truth.